You're listening to The Voice of Russia in London. I'm Alice Lanyado. In the latest of our series of interviews with Russians living in London and the UK, I talked to Alex Nikiforov, who came to Britain as a management consultant before changing profession completely and becoming a dance teacher. I began our conversation by asking Alex why he moved to the UK 6 years ago.
Because I studied in the US and was exposed to the Western world quite early in my life, I thought that I would move somewhere. I was thinking about the US, really, but then it turned out that it was easier to move to England.
Why did you think you'd move somewhere? Because you wanted to explore the world or because there were different opportunities?
I think the main reason is that I felt that there is just more freedom generally in the West. And when I say there is more freedom, I mean that I think this society, for example, places much more value on human life, on individual freedoms, than it is in Russia. England was, surprisingly, it was a huge surprise for me when I learned that it was quite easy, actually, to apply for a work visa here and come and have opportunity to work and live here.
What was your profession when you lived back in Moscow?
I was a manager of research in a management consultancy called McKinsey & Company. And I was doing very well in terms of career progression and everything.
Now, lots of people don't always understand what management consultants do. What was the kind of thing you were doing in your daily working life?
Well, the company itself advises senior managers, CEO levels and board level, on strategic issues, which markets to enter, if they have a merger with another company, how they go about it. We as researchers, as business researchers, we helped consultants to really have a fact base behind their recommendations to their clients.
When you came over to work for McKinsey, is that right?
Well, first I came over and then I found a job. I was open to anything. It just happened that they had a position in a new practice in the London office, and I applied and I went through interviews and I was hired again by the same employer.
Was it nerve-wracking leaving Moscow without having a job in another country?
No. I had enough money to live for a year, and I thought, well, I have this opportunity to come to another country and do my best and see, and if nothing works out, I can always go back and do something else.
Some people regret that Russia loses some of its best and brightest to foreign countries. I guess you're part of that brain drain.
Well, according to the UK Immigration Service, I came under the highly skilled migrant program. So this country actually wants us to come and stay and work.
But a shame for Russia.
A shame for Russia, of course.
I've heard that sometimes people back home don't believe Russians who come over here that they're not earning more money, that they haven't just come for financial reasons.
I think it's a legacy. If you look back at early 90s, when Russia started its transition to the market economy, in my first job, I was earning $3 per month working as a translator. So everyone in the West was much better off. And people find it difficult to believe that someone would leave a good job, a good flat, and be happy with having less in terms of wealth here.
You're not someone who isn't fond of Russia, though. What do you miss about living in Russia? What do you miss about home?
I miss my family. When I go there and
Where's there? Where do your family live?
In a city called Yaroslavl, which is northeast of Moscow, about 300 kilometers. It's a beautiful city, and there is the Volga River where I grew up. So each time I go there, I go for a long walk along the river. And it just, the whole scenery and the way it looks, particularly my home city, I think my native city, Yaroslavl, I feel at home there. I don't particularly miss Moscow, for example. I miss my Moscow friends, but I don't miss that city. Yeah, I would say just being in the environment where I grew up and seeing the same landscape and smelling the same air. I think these are some of the things that are very important to us.
When you first moved to the UK, was it difficult at the beginning?
No, it really was quite an easy transition. in part, the fact that I worked for the same company helped. So it was the same corporate culture.
And what about outside work, making friends?
It was quite easy, I thought. And of course, I must say that most of the people you meet, they tend to be foreigners and other Russians. So it's not that easy to break into real English friends. I was lucky that the place where I stayed, it was actually a shared house owned by an English guy. So I got exposed to his family, how things work. So it was very fortunate. But other than that, I think I've met quite a few of Russians who've been living here for years and never really got a chance to see how it works from inside, how the family is organized, what people are talking about, how they celebrate Christmas, how they plan their trips.
So English people are still quite hard to get to know?
Yes, I think so.
Is there something you miss about Russia in that sense, that people will invite you to the house, for example, more quickly, more easily than in the West?
Yeah, definitely. I don't particularly miss it because I think I'm actually more reserved. And it's definitely, there is this sense of not really being fully integrated. But as my first boss here was joking, he says, you'll never become English, but you're definitely a Londoner. So we are fortunate that we live in London, which is, it's not so important to be really English or to know all these things because it's full of people from all over the world. You have this curiosity to know more about the really British culture or English culture and how things work on the inside, but it doesn't really affect your day-to-day life if you don't, because it's so cosmopolitan.
Is there anything you particularly enjoy about London life, British culture? I'm not going to ask about the weather.
Actually, the weather I actually quite enjoy it because it's mild. And I think it's what I like about the pace of life and the way people talk to each other. It's very calm. It's very...
You think it's less emotional than in Russia?
I'm sure there are emotions. At least on the outside, it looks like Russia is a country of extremes. Either someone is very closed and even looks angry, and then you talk to them and they invite you to your house and they are the kindest people in the world and they want to share the whole, whatever they have with you very quickly, right? So it's really extreme, from one extreme to another. Whereas here it's more even, which I think suits me well.
Alex, you've changed your career quite dramatically from the world of corporate culture, a huge global company, to the world of dance teaching. I think that's quite a brave step. Did you get anyone telling you when you decided to make this change that you shouldn't do it, that it was too big a risk, you wouldn't earn any money? I mean...
I could sense in my family. I think they are the people who are concerned most about me. They didn't actively discourage me, but I could read their faces when I was saying that I'm doing less and less of corporate work and more of workshops of this practice, 5 rhythms. But otherwise, I think I got a lot of support from a lot of people. Everyone was saying that this is really brave.
What kind of dance do you teach? Can you explain the 5 rhythms method?
Yes, it does look like a dance, but we use this language, the dance language, actually not to perform, but as an exploration of what we are.
What happens when you go to a class?
When you go to a class, there is music. So that's important. And there are gentle instructions from a teacher like me. And the teacher helps you to go through what we call a wave, which consists of 5 rhythms, which are really types of energy that move your body in a different way.
So do you have different types of music for each phase?
Yes, each phase is supported by a different type of music. And each teacher selects the music that he or she feels is the right for this particular group, this particular venue, this particular time of the day. It's very targeted to the situation. And it does move people in a different way, from flowing to staccato, which is more definite and has stops and emotional release, and then to chaos, the 3rd rhythm, which is where we voluntarily give up our control and release our head. and then to lyrical, where we are light and we fly across the floor.
I mean, this may sound quite daunting to people who aren't naturally good at dance. Do people come to your classes who aren't natural dancers, and can they get something out of it?
This practice is not really for dancers. Of course, there are dancers, there are trained dancers who do this practice, but most of people had no experience in dance, no experience in meditation. In fact, the most loyal followers of this practice are people who couldn't find anything else that would move them, that would get their body moving.
That they enjoyed.
Yes, but this practice is so simple and so natural, so that finally they found something that moves them without extra effort on their behalf, and they're so happy.
So they can do what they can do during these 5 phases. They don't have to do a particular dance. They can dance in a way that comes to them naturally. Am I right?
Yes, it's exactly the point, to discover the dance that comes from within. And it doesn't have to look pretty, although it may and often does. And it doesn't need to look like anyone else's dance. It's a really simple but very powerful tool when you discover the movement that comes from within and you're happy with this.
And I suppose then people of all ages and all abilities, people with disabilities or health problems, can also join. It sounds like it's open to all.
Yes, I had people in wheelchairs. I had a blind lady dancing in a class. I've done one-to-one with a person who was coming out of coma in a hospital for several months. And I danced with a lady who was 90 years old. And there is a class in London for elders specifically, where the average age is 75. So this is really a practice that's so inclusive in terms of the physical level of fitness
required.
Yes, because you don't have to move like anyone else. Just move like you do.
Sounds very liberating. And you've taken this new type of dance to Russia and Ukraine as well, haven't you, Alex?
Yes, this is something that I'm very excited about and very proud.
And how have the Russians received you?
That's been an amazing journey, particularly in Moscow, where we have quite a well-established community. People know each other, they exchange messages, they share videos, share music, share meals. It's interesting to see how the national character presents itself in this dance. My classes in Russia are amazingly lyrical, very light, very open, very creative. So behind the facade, the surface of, sometimes you look in the street and it all looks so grey and intense and sometimes sad, and the weather is not nice, it's cold. And then people come and open up on the dance floor, and you see it's really, people are flying, they are not dancing. And it's, each time I see that, I think it's such a privilege to witness how people can open up and how much is within in their souls and how willing they are to share it with each other.
That was Alex Nikiforov, who teaches the 5 Rhythms dance method. You can find out more about him and his classes at www.freedom-dance.com. We're going to end with some of the music Alex uses in his classes. Listening to The Voice of Russia in London. I'm Alice Lanyado. Stay with us.